Hello, chess players. Another endgame contract awaits us on the board. And the topic is more breakthrough examples with pawns. So let's check the homework solution first. This was a tough one. And I've seen one of you in the comments wrote the answer as king g4 here. But it doesn't win. Yeah, you're trying to go after the pawn, but I think white can go bishop e7, and if you try to push d4, they just take. Okay, you take here, but what happens is white will just hold the bishop here, never move it out of this diagonal, and just put the king here, even giving away this pawn, and you're not gonna win this. Yeah, you're as we know, opposite color bishops endgames have a great tendency to fiddle out to a draw. So what was the first explosive move? And this was actually from a famous game Kotov-Botvinnik, 1955. So yeah, when we're talking about breakthroughs, especially in opposite color bishops, pawn quality is more important than quantity. Like if you create more pass pawns, usually you will win. So g5 was an explosive move. Why we're sacrificing a pawn like this? Well, in order to create another passer. But how? Well, first thing, if hg, then already we have a passer, and actually this pawn will be unstoppable. So white has to take with the f pawn. Now what? Very important moment. Now we need to play d4 to guard the b3 pawn. If we go king g4, then they take this pawn and they make a draw like this. So d4, we sack another pawn. Yeah, look, yeah, we sacked couple pawns just to create a passer. And now very important, where to move the king. I hope you don't move it to g4. Why? Because d5, white sacks the pawn back in order to defend, and they're holding a draw again. So instead we go king g3, not to allow bishop f2, and finally we create second front. Yeah, this is the passer now. Together with these two passers, we win the game. So king d3, king g5, and two pass pawns win this endgame. We just push them, bishop d5, and yeah, white can hold. These two pass pawns are too far away from one another. Yeah, either you move the king, we'll probably move the king to the queen side somewhere here, yeah, and just push the pawn like here. Yeah, so spectacular first move. A very hard example to kind of guess the idea if you didn't know it previously. Yeah, how these endgames are won. So g5 in order to just go after the h pawn like this. Yeah, first we of course defend the b3 pawn, then go after h pawn, and we create second pass pawn here. Yeah, breakthrough idea.
Killing monsters.
Okay, we have plenty of examples in this lesson, so let's get started by first one. This was Averbakh study. So I'm pretty sure you know how white should play here. Yeah, pause the video if you need. Where's the breakthrough? c5. We start this way, and bc. Yeah, if king d5, then we do what? We go c6, and this protected passer will win us the game. Long variation, but eventually we will win. Let's see it. King g6. First we collect that pawn. Those two, this protected pass pawn is, as we know from previous lesson, is defended tactically, so black cannot go. Yeah, after this, after b5, the c pawn runs away, so they have to stay put. Yeah, they have to stay in place. First we shoulder them, we push them back to the pawn, and here's the moment to think. Yeah, for you, how would white win? c7. We sack this pawn. Why? Because we know one important exception of the opposition. I hope you know it from theoretical endgames, yeah, not practical. That if the pawn has already crossed, yeah, if the pawn has already crossed the middle of the board, doesn't matter whose turn it is in this position, yeah, white wins anyway. So but important, there's a final trick for black. We have to go king a6. If you go king c6, there is a very good nice trick to know actually for black. King a7, and if white goes b6 now, it's a huge blunder. Why? Because black suddenly goes king a8 and it's a draw. Very, very fine trick to know in practical chess. It happens with the knight pawns. And here would be stalemate. And yeah, if we push, this is stalemate also. So black is kind of using the corner here to get this trick. So instead of b6, white could still win here by going back to this position and playing king a6 like we see here, right? King a6, and then opposition is given back to us by this move. I mean, we get the opposition, so black has to give way and we kick the king out of there. So yeah, long line, but if they allow us c6, we will win eventually. So what was the breakthrough? bc, a5, king d5. Now what? a6, you had to see this before, yeah, you played c5, otherwise we would lose here even. So this delaying, by delaying second pawn break, white gains a crucial tempo and black cannot access the c6 square. So king d6, if c4, then b6, yeah, breakthrough. And actually white will win queen with check, yeah, like this. c2, queens with check, and this pawn is stopped, c2. a6, king d6, and finally b6. This is a very nice procedure to know. We kind of like hack the square, yeah? It looks like king could be entering the square, where we kind of hack it by doing this. And king has obstacles, yeah? He cannot approach. He would love to go to b7, but that is taken, so white wins here. Very nice example of the breakthrough. Okay, here is the game Selimen-Castaneda, 1997. I think these were kind of unrated guys. So how should white win? How do we break through? d4 is the correct move. In the game, actually, yeah, white missed this. And this was played in the game. Big mistake. And actually that allowed black to win like this. Pawn is going through, white is lost. So, but white missed this amazing breakthrough, d4. How does he win? First thing, yeah, if c4, then c5, pawn goes through. If e4, e5, g4, e6, white wins because he's faster. And important move to calculate after d4 is g4. It's becoming kind of a race. dc5, king h2. If king f3, yeah, there's gonna be a race. We both queen, but white has first to move. So he goes queen f5 and we exchange queens next turn. Black is forced to the g file. We exchange queens and now c5 pawn is much faster. So we win again. Here, king h2. If it's king h2 played, yeah, not king f3. Kind of similar idea. I hope you've seen it from afar. Queen h8, and again, king is forced to the g file. We exchange, and this queen exchange, other passer goes through, yeah, c5 again. Okay, so kind of d4, yeah, d4. Usually breakthrough happens on the most protected square, as you already seen from many examples. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, here it's black to play. find the breakthrough here. Yeah, calculate a bit and find it. B4, that's the move. CB4. This was from the game, again, like you'll see in the description. Schmidt versus Hegner. CB. If AB, a variation, yeah, it would be the same, basically transposes to C3. So in the game happened this, C3, and black wins. Yeah, white can do the final trick. Very important what you do now. Yeah, don't go C2. This would even lose the game. Yeah, we're not catching this B pawn. So go, just get back into the square. Yeah, where is the square? We know it from the first lesson. There are the corners. We enter this rectangle square, yeah, and we stop the pawn, and then C2 next move. So that's how black won this game. Another example awaits us, and here is a familiar kind of case. Black just played kind of with the C pawn, but to prevent us before, of course. But white can create, we've seen this before, yeah, this in previous lesson we've seen this structure, how pass pawn is created against this. So other first move could have started, yeah, white king c4 and then go g4, but okay, that transposes here. And now king b6 was played. In this example is kind of given. This is not from a game, I think it's example by Mullen. So if g6, how do you think we're breaking through? Of course, we create contact, yeah, more contact here, and this pawn goes through. If f6, how do we win? Take the pawn and g5. Yeah, there. That creates a passer by the sack. So black waits, yeah, black waits, king g6, king b6. And now what? How should we create a breakthrough? Yeah, we kind of with the tempo moves, yeah, with Zugzwang, lured the king a bit away. Yeah, he had no good pawn moves, so king has to be waiting here. But at the moment he's a bit far away from the pawn. So how should we win? If you thought about g5, this doesn't work actually. King c6, f5, and actually we can even lose this because king c6, yeah, we lose this. So g5 not the right move. f5, the move order matters. Why? Because okay, if they take king c6, now what? Now we have a tempo move, b3, and we win like this. So after f5 they have to kind of go back with the king, and then what? How do we finish this game? How do we break through? f6, gf, ef, king tries to run back but he's not in time. g5 wins the game because this passer goes through. Yeah, king is not in the square. Okay, yeah, interesting example how the structure wins again. Yeah, we can create a breakthrough while using this. Remember this, yeah, if you have it in your games. Okay, we have now example from a game, Adams-Fridman 2012. And this was a rook endgame. So maybe I'll ask kind of how black should play. Yeah? Black is a bit in a tough spot. Okay, he's having a pawn up, but white is better. Why white is better? More active pieces, more active rook. So as usual, in the rook endgames, activity is key. So one pawn can not be mattering so much sometimes. So how should black play? What do you think? Okay, rook e8 was actually a good move. it could have kept the fight. Okay, we're giving the pawn back, but at least we're fighting like this and activating the rook. Okay, in the f6 is a bad move, of course. Why? Rook d7, and we win like this. So, but in the game b6 was played, but this forgot what? What did this move forget? Our breakthrough option. So where is this breakthrough? b5, of course. Adams doesn't waste the opportunity to create a powerful pass pawn. In rook endgames, very typical breakthrough. Like these pawns are looking at each other. Yeah, where it's like a battle lines clashing. Yes, here. So what happens if AB, then rook b5? There's a pin, and we win the b6 pawn, and we have a winning game here. Yeah, with a strong pass pawn. If ba5, same thing. Yeah, take another pawn, and this a5 falls, and it's a winning game. So black tried rook a8 in the game, but what happened? Yeah, white calculated everything perfectly. a5, king e5 even. Yeah, thanks to his active king, white wins comfortably. How? The game continued. a3, even rook g5 looks like this rook is a bit away to stop the a pawn. Yeah, so what's happening? Actually, black resigned here. So, yeah, how does this rook get back? Rook g5, king f8. Do you see how this rook gets back to stop the pawn? Well, we could use b7 first as a move. Rook b8, and how we get back with the rook? b6. Suddenly we open a5 square. Yeah, we don't care that we lose b7 because our king is so close, and we have another passer here, and that would win. Yeah, so that's why Strong and Master resigned after rook g5. He's seen the
place of power. It's gotta be.
Okay, hope you enjoyed this one. Let's move on to the next one. Plenty of examples in this lesson. Another classic, Wahltuch-Capablanca, 1922. Yeah, very classical, old school game. Okay, black has extra pawn, more space, and is winning. Yeah, but how to finish this game? Capablanca kind of made this task easier by a nice breakthrough. How would you make this breakthrough? First we started h4, gh, and e5. Very nice breakthrough, creating a pair of connected pass pawns. So yeah, we've seen in previous lessons the power of the connectors, especially in the rook endgame. Yeah, f4, they're rolling through. Rook e1, king e6, simple and strong. Now the king will back up those connected pass pawns. c4 was played, trying to break them apart. But if king c2, then we move on like this. And what's the move here? f3. f3 wins, forcing the exchange, and we queen. So c4, back to the game. King e5, but it didn't matter. Yeah, they exchanged a couple pawns, but still our connectors decide the game. You see, even if we are kind of pawn down, it doesn't matter. In the rook endgame, connectors are the treasure. Yeah, the white resigned in this hopeless position because pawns are just marching through, no way to stop them. Okay, next example is from the game Borgo-Iordachescu, 2006. So thanks to his space advantage, black has the initiative, but victory is still a long way ahead. However, white to move here, and black was suddenly helped by opponent. White played a mistake. Maybe you can think with white, actually. How would you try to defend this position? So a good move was actually e4, and the white has chances to hold here. If king d3, waiting move doesn't help so much. Why? Because black forces this exchange, and they go into a winning pawn endgame by doing f4, yeah, breakthrough like that. So f4 decides the game here. So, but in the game, yeah, so e4 was best chance for white. In the game, White thought they might simplify, exchange pawns by b3. But what did they miss? First, Black gave a check. Now King d3. If King b2, Black king enters decisively here. So King d3 had to be played. And now what? How do we create a breakthrough? b4. We've seen this pattern already in the rook endgames. Familiar pattern. Contact between two pawns. ba was played in the game. If ab, then we're taking back with a check. King c3. a3, of course, we advance. And this should be winning for Black. King d5, for example, takes, and King b4 should be some kind of zugzwang for White, since this move loses to what? To this move, and a pawn is going through. So in the game after b4, this pawn was taken. But of course we take another pawn, and unfortunately for White, he cannot prevent this king b4 move next. So e4 was tried, king b4 even. Now very funny, if they take the knight a2, we just promote. So king c2 had to be played. Knight e3, king b1, knight c4, excellent move. Another good option was just to take this pawn, take this, and play king b3. That wins also. But knight c4, takes, fg, if fg, but this decided. We take another pawn. We don't through capture back, but we create passer. So Black will queen with a check. It's a raise, but we're queening only one with a check. We're queening first. So White resigned. A very practical example how breakthroughs happen in a tournament game. Let's move on to the next example. Here we see this position, which could have occurred in the real game. It's kind of Hellsten, from his famous book about endgame strategy. It's an exercise from that book. So White can win in kind of domino fashion, like we've seen already from previous lesson, domino effect breakthrough. So I'm pretty sure you see the first possible move. It's g4. g4, and what happens? King g8 is the main line, but of course, what if Black takes? Then where's this domino effect? f5, ef. If king g8, then we win like this. If they come with the king, then we win with these connected passers. Connected passers, they decide the game. So where is this domino effect? We sack g4, they take, we sack another pawn, they take, and d5. We sack 3 pawns, but the last one goes through, like in some, we sacked for a team, all these pawns fell for a team, but one last pawn goes through. So that's how, very fancy line here with b5. But of course Black tries to get back with the king immediately. So what do? We take this pawn, take, and d5 again. We sack to create b5 passer. Of course, if they take, then b5, and Black is not in this square. He cannot enter this box, so we win. If king f8, then again, kind of similar like we've seen an alternative line. We create these connectors, and they guard each other. Self-guarding structure. King has to stay there, and now White has to just maneuver with the king cleverly to win the game. So king 3 is played. If king c7, Black has to wait. If h5, for example, we just go back and collect that pawn. So king has to wait, but f3, takes, king d6, king e3. Now we're trying to get to d4 with tempo, so we kind of do this little dance, triangulation, and finally we get there. So if at this moment h5 was played, again we go back and collect that pawn. So after king e5, now we're close enough to this f5 pawn, so we collect it, and then we easily win. So I thought this was kind of interesting, domino effect example We can sack bunch of pawns just to create one passer if the king is far away. Okay, here we have an example from, I think, the famous book 1953 games, played by legendary players Stahlberg versus Geller. So in the game, White seems to be kind of holding his own. However, a breakthrough could have destroyed his defenses. So I'll just show you what happened in the game. The game, Black played not a good move, h5, but White took his chance and went to exchange the bishops, to deprive Black of the bishop pair, and eventually White managed to draw this game. So how would you improve? How would you create a breakthrough in this position? And again, breakthrough usually happens on the most protected square. b4, fantastic move. AB is the line. If CB, then a good variation is queen b3. We grab the b2 pawn and then we advance the c passer. That's how we win. If AB, of course, we keep sacking, destroying the structure and creating a passer like this. Now c pawn is a passer, so b5 could be a move. Knight g3, we will go bishop d2 and advance the pawn. And if f3, we can do a very nice move. f4, another breakthrough here. So b5, for example, can be played. Bishop e5, knight g3. If you push c3 immediately, maybe White has some chances to hold the draw like this. So better to play queen b3. Yeah, still very tough line, like in practical game. Very hard moves to kind of understand, but the whole idea of b4 we should know. Bishop f1, c3, and now finally, yeah, that White Black moved the queen to b3 to support c2 and queen b1. So yeah, amazing first move b4, yeah, to just blow the structure apart just for one passer. Yeah, we sack 2 pawns just for one passer.
I hate portals.
Okay, on to the next game. This was Videnova-Raznikov 2012. Well, we have another endgame of opposite color bishops, and we know in these endgames breakthrough is an important resource. With one extra pawn on each flank, the b pawn is severely limiting, yeah, White's bishop, and Black has a chance to create another passer somewhere on the king side. So how to do it? How would you do it? Where is this breakthrough? So there are actually a couple good moves. If you thought about king f4, just to create e4, that also wins. Let's check this line. King e2, e4, takes, bishop c2, g5, yeah, we push the pawns, we push this pawn, we advance. If king f1, then e2, and we win like this. If bishop e4, trying to guard g2, then we kind of just can maneuver the bishop around a bit. Yeah, no hurries, White has to stay put. And finally, here is a nice breakthrough. Can you see it? g4 takes, h3 takes, king f4, and yeah, very nice idea. Why? Because after bishop has to guard b1, yeah, so he has to stay on that diagonal, but that allows us king f3, and finally, yeah, these pawns cannot be stopped. b1 is next and followed by e2. Very nice line here with this g4, yeah, to create, this time we just create this f3 square for us like this. Very nice variation. Yeah, so king f4 would also win, yeah, with the c4 idea. In the game though, e4 immediately was played. So this breakthrough is actually aimed at creating a pass pawn on the h file, as we'll see. Yeah, so Black saw this, and what is he doing? f4, e5, g5. Yeah, this passer, this White passer is going nowhere. Yeah, so we sacked just to have this majority here, so it's easier to create a breakthrough. Bishop f5 was played. If bishop e4, then f3. And white cannot take with the bishop, of course. Yeah, he has to guard b1, so has to take with the pawn. But then that's how we win. Yeah, h pawn is passer is created. So bishop f5. But now what? g4 anyway. Yeah, bishop cannot take because we queen on b1. Has to take with the h pawn. What if he does that? Then you see how many pawns we sacked in the opposite color bishop just to create, yeah, 2 outside passers are enough usually to win. You can sack many pawns like this, but if you create outside pass pawns separated by a bigger distance, the defense cracks and we just promote. So e6 was tried in the game, but it didn't help. Takes, and finally we created the h-pawn passer. But e7, here is an important moment. Now what? Very important not to blunder at the end. If we take this pawn, white can actually make a draw by this move. Yeah, and our h passers are not enough. Wrong corner, yeah, here, wrong corner. So I hope you've seen, yeah, black saw this till the end. h2, he even allowed queening, but he saw the mating sequence. Actually white here resigned, so the mating sequence is this: king d2, bishop b4, king c2 here, and there's the mate. Very nice calculation by black to see this till the end. And yeah, we can learn from this example. I learned it myself, yeah, from this investigating these examples, how it's pawn quality, yeah, not quantity in the opposite color bishops. You can sack a couple pawns just to create passers, which will just decide the game if they're far away from each other. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Let's see the next one. Here we have a game, Cramling-Seyfried, 2011. Well, so here we have a familiar structure again. So I'm sure you've seen it before. Yeah? So what should be the first move of white? h5. White creates this, maybe I could call it breakthrough structure. Yeah, potential breakthrough structure. In the game, black played f6, which lost kind of immediately by force. But let's check other moves. Actually, best move for black would be this. Best practical try was just to wait and bring the knight closer to stop the pawns. But I think white has good winning chances. If black waits, white will still kind of move the king around and try to break through at some moment. So this is still a huge, big advantage to white and big winning chances. But if knight d8, then we could win in this line like this: bishop g6, just to stop knight f7, and then g5 is coming next. So, but in the game, black tried to immediately break the structure apart, but that lost the game. How? Maybe you can pause the video here and calculate, yeah, till the end. ef, gf, we exchange this, and g4. That's black even resign here. That is winning. Why? g4, king cannot catch the breakthrough. Yeah, the pawns are breaking through, and yeah, some liners given, but g6 now. You don't need to take on h6 because that will be lost, but we decide with the protected pass pawn now. Yeah? So you see how important it is to know various aspects of practical endgames. Yeah. Sometimes breakthrough, you can make a breakthrough, but not till the end. But then you create, for example, protected passer, and that will win the game. And here are some arrows. Yeah, white will create a kind of second front by opening path to his king with a5. Okay, and here is the final example. This was a big Averbakh study in 1950. This is a very complex example by legendary endgame theoretician Averbakh. It's based on the game Smyslov-Averbakh from 1950. Yeah, so it's kind of imaginary position, but very, very instructive again in the opposite color bishops. I found them fascinating for the breakthrough theme. So again, pawn quality, yeah, beats pawn quantity, as we know in these type of endgames. So I'm pretty sure you know the first move, yeah, now that we studied many breakthroughs. So g4 is a strong breakthrough idea, which will create the pass pawn either on the f file or h file. So hg is the line. If black takes with the f pawn, then f5 again. Kind of reminds me of the previous game, yeah, we've seen from opposite color bishops. Bishop cannot take, yeah, he has to guard a8 square. So pawn has to take, but then we take here, and that creates a second pass pawn. Harry the h pawn, yeah. So this is how white would win. Yeah, they will just maneuver the king and bishop around for a bit, start pushing the pawn, pushing the king back. If he goes here, then this will win. Yeah, black's defenses are overstretched. If king f7, then this will eventually win. Yeah, some maneuvers. King f7, h6 will be happening. If king h7, this is how we win. Yeah, h pawn falls, but it doesn't matter because we go with the king to the queen side and win there. So yeah, actually the main line is given as hg. So same thing. We create, yeah, we sack one pawn there because they are doubled, but we create f passer now. F passer, yeah, together with a, they will decide the game. Yeah, in opposite color bishops, outside pass pawns if they're further away from each other. Like in the pawn endgames, yeah, they beat, I would say, every other pass pawn type usually. Of course, chess is such a hard game that you definitely could find exceptions, but yeah, it's usually most of the times like this. And king e7, f5 would be happening. Yeah, these pawns now go through if they try to make a switch with the king and bishop. Yeah, they're not fast enough. Yeah, we will sack one of them, will go through. So bishop f3 could be tried here. a7. Those pawns start rolling. Bishop h4 now was important move. This maneuver will enable white to take the h5 pawn, and then we will advance. If you rush with f6, that will actually be a draw. How? Bishop d5. Yeah, if bishop d4 now, g3, and this will hold the draw for black. And if bishop h4, black waits till we capture, and then goes g3, g2. And the problem for us, white cannot win, because even if he brings king to b8, yeah, to promote here, black will take on a8, of course, sacking the bishop, but that will deflect. Imagine this bishop would be here, yeah, protecting pawn. This g1 will deflect our bishop, and then they will take our last pawn. So that's how black draws in this situation. Back to the main line. Yeah, instead of the wrong move f6, white is not in a hurry anywhere. He's just positioning pieces better. Yeah, some maneuvers, repositioning bishop here. Bishop e4. Finally we can take, yeah. Of course, black cannot take, yeah. a8 queen. He always has to guard this a8 square. And the g3 can happen. Bishop takes. And finally, it looks like black is almost making a draw here. He can even take with the check here. But this example is so fun, yeah, because king f4, and ultimately, yeah, black cannot come back to e4 like this. Yeah, king is taking e4. So this study by Averbakh, I found it fascinating. Yeah, it's of course probably the hardest example we've seen yet, but very nice, yeah, to showcase how we create pass pawn, yeah, with opposite color bishops like this. Yeah, we created two outside passers, which eventually decided the game. All right, and that leaves us with your homework assignment. So it's from a real game. And here it's black to play. How would you win with black? Of course, yeah, big hint. This is a breakthrough theme, so, but you need precise calculation how to do it. So next theme will be still continuing breakthrough, but with pieces, yeah, not pawns now. We're gonna check breakthroughs with pieces. So thanks everyone for watching, hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.